Hello, it is Creature, and today I forgot to take my meds, and now I'm dealing with entities from beyond my comprehension. This isn't the first time, and I am the closest thing to a specialist that one can be in such a situation. Look, I play video games to escape the schizophrenia ghosts that haunt my every waking moment. However, they seem to have been able to worm their way into today's topic of discussion, No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky can be seen as an example of what happens when the devs actually give a shit. It is commonly compared to Fallout 76. Both games metaphorically and damn near literally shit the bed on launch. But where Fallout 76 is a shameless cash grab masquerading as a once deeply beloved video game franchise, which has seen very little updates save the bare fucking minimum to make sure it's actually playable and that it won't brick anyone else's computers. And yes, I fully expect to receive some flack for shit-talking Fallout 76 from both you people and my own friends. It's apparent to me that there is a bit more passion behind the development of No Man's Sky, seeing as the game is completely unrecognizable now from what it once was. Sean Murray, the patron saint of video game developers, saw fit to completely overhaul and expand upon many of the different game mechanics in this game in a bid to keep up with the promises that they made during the initial press tour. And they have far exceeded anything that anybody was expecting. To rub a little bit more salt in the wound, Bethesda attempted to do what No Man's Sky had already done. Despite having millions of dollars in the backing of a multi-billion-dollar tech conglomerate, Bethesda was only able to shit out the failed abortion that was Starfield. A game that attempted to do what Sean and the boys had gotten done in a flooded basement back in 2016, failed dramatically, being one of the most boring and uninspired games of all time. And I know that some people, for some reason, actually enjoy Starfield, but I must assume that after well over a decade of the most uninspired garbage being churned out by the AAA industry year after year, their tastes must have been ruined by the slop. No Man's Sky is an open galaxy exploration game, and I say open galaxy because saying open world doesn't even do this game a modicum of justice when it comes to the amount of shit you can do. Unlike Starfield, you could theoretically circumnavigate an entire planet. However, I wouldn't really recommend you do this considering it's probably going to take you a couple of hours. Do you want to be a mercenary? Do you want to be a merchant? How about a planetary governor? Or even a space pirate? Better yet, you can be a space cowboy in the most literal meaning of the word and the fun meaning of the word. You can do literally whatever you want, since this game is so fucking expansive. And it's even got decent VR support, so if you ever feel like piloting your own ship and running around some random world yourself, there you go. And due to the fact that the similarities between our games begin and end at the start screen, let's take a look at the lore. Gonna be another one of those. Since I don't really feel like getting into the Corvo Gek hyper war over the Atlantid right now, I feel that the best way to try and actually start this video and describe this game would be to regale you with the many exploits of my current playthrough. I started off with Expedition 16, where I was promptly warned that horrors from beyond the stars will be invading my reality constantly. Armed with a subpar ship, a slightly okay multi-tool, and the fleeting knowledge of playthroughs pasts, I got to work. And I shit you not even 2 minutes later, abyssal horrors from beyond the colors of madness began to invade my world, only testing me at first before becoming outright hostile. Then the echoes from a much greater entity began to pop up all over my screen. The entity, locked in time, said that it was near and that it was coming for me. So I got into my ship and got the fuck off that planet, only to find out that my ship did not have a hyperdrive and that I would be unable to jump star systems. After the game gave me my schizo meds, I was able to have a little bit of breathing room and take stock on what the hell is going on. Now, in normal No Man's Sky, most planets have some form of environmental factor that will slowly degrade your suit's integrity. However, to my horror, I found that every single planet, regardless of habitability, was infested with these boundary-breaking monstrosities. And I quickly realized that the only way for me to make the monsters go away was to complete the mini expedition tasks that were set out before me. Some of these tasks were stuff like seeking shelter, making a potion, and banishing the demons back to the warp where they fucking belong. And after being given a recipe for blood, blood, I quickly realized that this is not a monster we're running away from. This is a monster we're gonna punch in the fucking mouth. This ain't my first rodeo dealing with extra-dimensional horrors that seek to break into our reality. So after getting the runic blood recipe and metaphorically dropping it in the water and summoning whatever the fuck lies beneath the surface, we are then teleported to another system. From here, all we need to do is complete all the objectives of each expedition area, get a new recipe for blood, and then piss off the Elder God. We do that a grand total of 5 times before coming face to face with whatever the fuck that thing is. I'm fresh out the dungeon, bitch boy. You ain't scaring me, motherfucker.
We're just gonna kill him!
After sending the bitch-ass wannabe Dagon back beneath the waves where it belongs, we are given an S-rank ship and a pre-installed warp drive with a shit ton of upgrades. And now we can finally start playing the game. Now, the difference between starting a brand new character during an expedition and normally is roughly a couple dozen million credits, tens of thousands of nanites, and about 15 hours. This is the point of the game when everything opens up to you. And if you start during an expedition like I did, then you should have a couple systems that are acting as pseudo core worlds. This is extremely helpful as people tend to make a bunch of farming bases that anybody can just kinda show up to and pull stuff from. Or if you don't feel like doing even the slightest amount of work to get a bunch of resources, download the No Man's Sky save editor, locate your save file from the Steam directories, open it up, and you'll be able to give yourself an infinite amount of money, nanites, and resources. You can also fill up all of your storage containers and starships and various inventory slots of different vehicles with whatever the fuck you want. You can add in as many valuable resources and shit as you could possibly imagine. Now, you may be asking yourself, Creature, will this get me banned? No. Anyway, after getting off Cthulhu's shit list, I just kind of explored the star systems around the core worlds that everybody would be pouring out of once everybody got done with the expedition. I was able to find a system that had sadly already been discovered, but it was completely unexplored. And it wasn't too far away from the quote-unquote core systems and had a decent amount of planets with a good amount of environmental variety between them. So I immediately beelined to the overgrown lush world and set up a temporary base. From here, I was able to go back to the many other bases that I'd left on the expedition worlds and pretty much strap them down to nothing but a couple of generators and a teleporter. And while I desperately combed for a settlement on my green and beautiful lush world, sadly, the only two I was able to find in this system were on an icy planet and on a desert planet, and sadly, you can only have one settlement at a time. So if anybody wants to settle the Wild West settlement that is existing on the arid planet in my system and truly become the embodiment of a space cowboy, join the Discord and hit me up. I'll take you over to where it is in my core system, where I will allow you to manage my property for me. However, I am a benevolent system governor and will only demand payments and taxes once you've gotten the settlement profitable. Anywho, from here I mainly just kind of focused on getting a nice capital class ship, building up my settlement, and building up my base. Mainly focusing on my base. Look, like I said, there is a million different things that you can do in this game to make money, so allow me to elucidate you into one of my favorites. One of the most profitable things that you can do in No Man's Sky, a hyper-futuristic space game, is agriculture. Many of the planet-specific plants that you can harvest can be grown in your base and further processed into either a few dishes that will give you temporary buffs, or further processed into commercial and industrial goods. For instance, Mordite and fungal molds. Independently, each one of these resources is relatively worthless, but if you combine them together, you can get acid, which is worth 188,000 credits. And you can pretty easily mass produce these resources with a couple of hydroponic bays or biodomes. But like I said, this is just one example. All of these kinds of plants can be combined together with other plants or certain resources to produce very expensive goods. You can take this even further by further refining the produced goods to get even more more expensive and valuable resources. Or you don't have to do any of that. You could find a world with either burial sites or scrap and explore the world in order to recover these valuable assets. These types of valuables can be worth anywhere from tens of thousands to millions of credits. I mean, shit, you don't even have to worry about farming or hunting down valuable resources and artifacts. If you want, you can just hop systems for a good bit until you find one that has a lot of freighters on it. You can attack those to get free resources at the cost of ammunition and/or your own life. So it might be a good idea to hire some random boys over at the space station to add them to your strike team. Again, if there is some method that you can imagine of making money in a sci-fi setting like No Man's Sky, you can probably do it. Trust me, I've done 100 different methods to make money in this game, and I've usually ended up being a multi-billionaire, each method varying wildly on the spectrum of morality. This shouldn't come to a surprise to anybody, as you all should know by now, I am a gremlin whenever it comes to in-game currencies. But beyond the wonders of space capitalism, how is the actual gameplay? Well, most of the time it's pretty laid back. You can partake in whatever forms of deforestation or mineral extraction on whatever planet you wish, relatively unmolested. That is until the Sentinels find you, but more on that later. But for most of the game, your main priority is going to be gathering resources. That is until you eventually get into the millionaire's tax bracket. Most of the basic stuff at this point is better to just buy than actually harvesting yourself, because your time is now more valuable. You will, at one point or another, have to go to a space station or hop into the anomaly. Almost every system has a station of one form or another, and they act as the main gameplay hub. Here you can get some quests, find some locations of interest, or upgrade your ship and/or customize your own appearance, as well as a bunch of other stuff like getting the location of derelict freighters, recruiting NPCs to your squadron, and buying and scrapping multi-tools and ships. The Anomaly is the main multiplayer hub and is going to be the main story hub as well. There's different rotating community missions that give Quicksilver once completed. Quicksilver can be used to get you cosmetics. You can also talk to a bunch of the different iterations at the Anomaly, some of which will give you nanites as a reward for milestone completions and exploration. And nanites are an extremely valuable resource, as they are your main upgrade currency along with tech modules. Tech modules can be found by just digging around on planets, and nanites can be earned 100 different ways. And you will need every single fucking nanite if you want to fully upgrade your stuff. I'll put it this way. In the upgrade room on the Anomaly, 5 out of the 6 terminals require nanites for the upgrades. Tech modules are literally only used for base upgrades. So in my opinion, it's usually a good idea to track down some runaway mold spawning areas and build a nice little base next to it and around it. Or find somebody who already has, go to their base, which are usually titled nanite or mold base. You can also get mold by processing industrial quantities of slime. Or, again, you can do none of that and just open up the No Man's Sky save editor. Now, let's take another look at the lore. I'm not going to be doing a lore spoiler bit here. Why? Because the lore is so fucking incomprehensible, cryptic, and hidden in this game that most people think that the crazy shit begins and ends with the Artemis mission. For right now, I'm only really going to be talking about the surface level shit, and I will give a proper warning whenever we get into the deep lore. To start off, let's start with the Xenos. And since most of the races have their roots in the Gek-Corvo-Atlantid Hyperwar, I'll start with the Vekine, since they don't. The Vakine, or Viking, which I'm just going to fucking call them Viking, are homies. 8 the Sentinels, 8 the weak, love me interlopers, love me guns, love me Urk. They're our homies. They claim to be the first to cast off the destructive yoke of the Sentinels, and that's more than enough for me. Fuck the Sentinels. Now on to the Hyperwar. Release me! A long-ass time ago, in every single conceivable dimension, the Gek First Spawn went on their own great crusade. They sought to conquer the stars as they were the largest and most ferocious species in the galaxy. The Korvax lived peacefully on Korvax Prime, where despite being a race of synthetic life, they took a much more environmentalist approach to life. They didn't dig or do anything to piss off the Sentinels that they saw as the angels to the god known as the Atlas. Well, whenever the Gek found the Korvax, they were not too pleased to find that this race was living on a world that was chock full of resources and potential. And the fact that the Korvax had outright refused any attempt to harvest even the smallest amount of it was an abomination to the Gek. And thus, the Corvo-Gek hyperwar began. The first line of defense were the Sentinels, which are effectively multi-dimensional entities that seek to catalog and categorize everything in the galaxy. However, they were nothing compared to the might of the Gek Empire. Such was the power of the first spawn. The Gek slaughtered hundreds of millions of Korvax and threw their casings, which could be reignited with new life, into space or melted them down for scrap. The war and harvesting of Korvax Prime saw the Atlantid, a massively incomprehensible entity that protected the Korvax and lived just beneath the crust in the center of the planet, exploded itself, saving what few Korvax remained by putting them into the crystals and yeeting them across the galaxy, but at the cost of completely severing them from the Korvax hive mind. The ones that weren't saved in this manner were enslaved, and the Gek were not kind masters. Utilizing the massive amounts of resources made all the easier to mine thanks to the Atlantid going supernova. This hurled the Gek into a new golden age. The Sentinels were absolutely fucking traumatized. Since the Sentinels come from the world of glass, they exist as multidimensional entities, and got a front row seat to seeing their favorite race and planet get brutally slaughtered and destroyed for an infinite amount of times over an infinitely small and large amount of time. Now they seek to kill and destroy anything that reminds them of the destruction of Korvax Prime, i.e. this means harvesting and mining shit on planets. From here, the Korvax and the Sentinels devised a plan to alter the Gek. They went to the Gek spawning pools and infested them with nanites. The nanomachines would alter the very DNA of the fetal Gek, slowly as to not get caught, but over time, the Gek became more docile, less aggressive, and kinder to their slaves. And after an unknown amount of time, they had become shorter, stunted, and irrevocably changed. They had become genetically uninterested in their own history and culture. They only sought to acquire wealth and see any necessity for war. The years of poisoning by the Korvax had left them as nothing more than a hollow whisper as what they once were, and thus, the newborn overtook the firstborn and freed the Korvax and became the Gek that we think of today. Now's the point where I'm just gonna kind of say what's going on, or at least what I can figure out what's going on, since again, this lore is very fucking dense. So here's your proper warning. Alright then, here's the big reveal. The entire premise of this game is that the Earth is dead, humanity escaped, but was forced to leave a massive artificial intelligence behind. And so much time has passed that the AI is now getting sucked into a black hole and has roughly around 20 minutes left before it gets swallowed whole. The repetition of the number 16 is in reference to the fact that there are 16 minutes left before the AI dies. However, due to the laws of relativity and time dilation, we still have millions of years left. We and everyone else are mere copies of the AI's creator placed into an infinite amount of simulations that the AI is running before it dies in an attempt to learn why they were left behind. It understands the logical and logistical reason of why it was too big to be put on a ship, but it can't understand how the creator could have brought themselves to abandon it. Korvax Prime was to be a sort of synthetic utopia, protected by something of an avatar of the Atlas, aka the AI, in the form of the Atlantid. And there's also Telemon, who is another routine program running through the system, but he hasn't been... Wait a second. If the AI is the Atlas, and the Atlas is effectively God, and the Atlantid was one of its avatars that is now associated with the world of glass and the purple glass. Oh, that's what this expedition was about. Alright, great. So I guess we're gonna see where this goes, because the one fucking time I actually did research on this channel, it's fucking worthless because the lore's changing. No Man's Sky is what can happen to a game whenever the devs give a shit. Despite releasing like shit and getting shat on constantly to this very day, No Man's Sky has not only become an extremely large game where every single expansion has been free so far, but kept its promises to the community and given us something that is much more than we could ever have asked for. And again, to add to its acumen, fucking Bethesda, attempted to do in 2023 what Hello Games did in 2016 and failed miserably. This game gets a solid 9 out of 10 from me, and it is an extremely fun game. It's currently $60 on Steam, but it does go on sale very frequently, usually being around half off for the seasonal sales and big expansions. So if you can hold off a few weeks before the Steam winter sale, you can probably get it on sale for cheap. I also have a Discord now, so if you're interested or want to help me create a miniature space empire, join the Discord. And this is probably gonna be the only video that I post this month. Sorry, I know, but I'm really just gonna be taking a lot of this time to just start working on a little bit of a backlog, since the next game I'm going to be talking about hasn't really come out yet. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all in the zone. Peace.